Hey everyone, welcome back to this episode of Screen Time. I'm your host Matt, and on today's episode, we'll be reviewing the new live-action remake, Lilo and Stitch. So the original Lilo and Stitch came out in 2002, and it wasn't given the same budget as some of the other kind of animated films that we grew up with. It was more a smaller animated film, and that allowed the creatives to really have freedom and go under the radar with a lot of their choices, including more famously the watercolored backgrounds and the art style of the faces and stuff like that. With this new one, it was announced around 2018-19 where we would be getting a live action remake, and it was originally set to be a Disney Plus original film. A few directors were in and out of talks, but in the end they chose Dean Fisher-Camp, the director of Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, which personally is one of my favorite films of that year's releases. I sobbed. I ugly cried during watching that one. And you can kind of understand where Disney was kind of envisioning this film to be. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On is a very low budget film with a main cutesy character, just kind of having that very younger brain, or underdeveloped, I wouldn't say underdeveloped, but very naive, you could say. Naive brain and character traits. So you could see where Disney's thought process was. So my relationship with the original might not be as nostalgic as some of you guys. I don't remember watching it as a kid, so I recently rewatched it and it did jog the memory bank because I knew I had seen it, I just didn't remember anything about it. I recently rewatched it, and now that I've seen the live action remake, there are some key differences. Like Lilo and Nani's relationship is very different. There's less of a focus on the maternal kind of relationship that they have in the original animated film. It's more focused on the sibling, which is a very interesting choice. Lilo takes a while to forgive Stitch in the original film. In the newer one, it seems very instant. Like one scene, she's mad, and then the next she's like, "This is my dog Stitch." It's like, okay. Tatu isn't really a main character, even less so in the animated film. She was a small character in the live action, but she pretty much didn't exist in the animated film. David is much more integral to the plot of the animated. He's there throughout the film and isn't just placed in just to remind the audience that, he exists and he's the love interest for Nani. Very, very different choices, very strange additions. And there's a whole character that's just been erased, which completely changes the ending. It completely changes a few characters' relationship with Stitch and Lilo and other things like that. And then there's another character that was added in, which is seemingly for a cameo appearance of one of the voice actors, but it adds nothing to the plot, and the movie ends up in the same kind of location as the original film. So at its core, the new Lilo and Stitch live action remake is a basic, serviceable kids film that doesn't have a lot of meat on its bone. It's missing that key, meat aspect, but from a kid's perspective, it's cute, it's fun, it's serviceable, it has a middle, it has a start, it has an end. There's nothing too offensive in the whole film. It also doesn't say anything, but we'll get into that. As I mentioned before, the director Dean Fisher-Camp, his style stemming from Marcel the Shell with Shoes On is very ethereal, or he takes the simple mundane and turns it into this ethereal kind of light and breezy kind of aesthetic, and it really shifts the viewer's perspective on what can do what, and that's just what I've seen from his Marcel movie, which is very surprising for me because Marcel has all of the atmospheric traits of the original Lilo and Stitch, with the watercolors and the cutesy, things, and the simplistic nature of it. But this new live action movie just doesn't. It's very flat, and there's not a lot of imagination when it comes to color grading and cinematography and other things like that. So it was very surprising and a bit of a letdown that he went from Marcel, which is woohoo, yes, to Lilo and Stitch, which is just like, you could interchange any director and there would be no difference. It was serviceable. It was just another Disney Plus original film, even just a Disney at this point. The ending is very different. I won't go into spoilers, but there's a major character from the animated film that is completely cut. I'm guessing due to budgetary restraints, because he's an alien, and it completely changes. It relies on switching somebody else over to be the big bad in the end, and then changes the whole ending to have one of the aliens stay and one of them go, and it just changes it a lot. And unfortunately, it doesn't do it for the better. It does it for the worse, because that whole end scene and it was kind of like a duo final climactic scene with the one group in the original and then this other guy, which they've cut. So it really limits the kind of impact the ending has on it. It just feels like it went nowhere, and people's motivations didn't really line up with what the film had set out to accomplish. Even when you take into account, like, they're not the characters from the animated film, but they still have the same motivations, and they shouldn't be acting in a certain way that they have to, because the main character's not there. Sorry, one of the main characters isn't there. Moving on to the actors. So Stitch is very well realized. It's one of the most positive things I can say about this film, is that Stitch is really well realized in live action. I don't think the VFX team could get any more credit, because they deserve all the credit. They've fully realized a 2D character in 3D animation with realistic textures. That's an amazing accomplishment, but they didn't really use him a lot. He was very distant and not really there, and a few of Stitch's key sequences where it's just Stitch are missing from this new one, which you kind of feel by the end of it. You're like, oh, we actually kind of didn't really meet Stitch, and we're seeing Stitch through Lilo's eyes and not really through each other's eyes. It's it's a two-hander film, so it's a bit disappointing in that area. Lilo, on the other hand, her actor is quite good as a child actor. There's no real negatives there. I would say that she transitions from being sad to happy very quickly in each scene. The lingering of emotions probably needs a little bit of work. One scene she would be angry at Stitch, and then the next, that anger just is not present on her face, and it's more just like a medium, or just happy. It goes from, it bounces around, and I think that kind of, the feeling should linger no matter if it's happy or angry between scenes. Like the next day, if she was angry at Stitch that day, she should be angry at Stitch this day, at least for the first bit of it, until he redeems himself. So imagine how Nani's character has been severely changed from the original. She's no longer that, maternal figure in Lilo's life. She's more a sister figure with being forced into that maternal role, which I guess is more realistic. They've added this plot where Nani wants to, learn marine biology and go to university, but now can't because Lilo needs looking after. Not present in the original. Nani, again, was frustrated at the circumstances that were given to her, but not really from I don't want to be here, I want to be, going to university, but more from I want my parents back, and why am I in this situation of all people. It's a more kind of understanding frustration, not really the longing to be somewhere else rather than being forced to babysit your sister. So that kind of change in her character is really, it does create a lasting imprint all over the film, and where she ends up by the end of it is very interesting and kind of doesn't really have the same impact and, you know, homeliness or like comfortness as the original did. Okay, so Jumba and Pleakley, I think I pronounced those right, can't remember names for the life of me, have definitely been changed. So in the original, there was a lot of discourse over, you know, queer representation. You know, there's this, they dress up in pretty much what is considered drag. They, you know, wear wigs, they wear makeup, and they go around the city. And a lot of the discourse after the film's release is that like that's a queer relationship. That they're two guys, you know, they have very relationshipy type conversations and experiences, and it's very bickery back and forth, but in a fun, flirty way, somewhat. But in this one, they've kind of stripped all that. But then they also haven't, which is really strange. Like, I would think that either they would keep that element or completely strip it away. But unfortunately, they just take all the fun parts out of it and leave kind of weird choices. So the drag isn't there anymore, which is kind of what we expected. Disney wants the least problematic kind of result as possible. But then they leave this bathtub sequence, which is where Goomba is like on the bed in a room, Pleakley is in the bath, and, you know, they're in the same space, it's pretty close proximity, and they're just having a conversation back and forth, and then Pleakley gets into his robe, and then he, you know, falls into a portal or whatever happens. But it's like, why include that? Did that really need to be in the film? Could have they been just doing like legit anything else? There was definitely a reason behind including that kind of relationshipy situation, but then they don't include everything else. If you're going to include that, include the other things, or just don't give us anything. Because at that point, it's something you don't want to do, and that's queerbaiting. Alright, so the last character I want to discuss is Cobra Bubbles. So they added a support worker role to give the original voice actor of Nani a role. But unfortunately that causes Cobra Bubbles to take a step back, so he's kind of a support worker, kind of not. And he's not really that influential on the story anymore. Neither is the new character. So there was no point in adding this new character. Like, the original voice actor of Nani could have been like playing anything, could have been, you know, the manager at the bar that fires Nani. It could have been, you know, a fucking lifeguard at the beach that helps, you know, Lilo build a sandcastle. It could have been legit anything, and they could have kept Cobra Bubbles in the same position, in the same role, in the same thing. Like, you don't need to change what you don't need to change. If it's perfectly fine the way it is, then why change it? You're adapting something, you're not completely changing it and taking the heart and soul out of it. But that's Cobra Bubbles. He's kind of non-existent and kind of pointless, like a lot of things in this film. Alright, so overall, I did enjoy this film. I want to get that right. I did enjoy it, but, you know, taking into consideration the original, they're they're on different leagues, they're on different playing fields, they're not the same. And they had so much potential to make this really good live action thing. They have the model of Stitch in live action. They nailed the hardest part of getting this adaptation right, and yet they fumbled mainly everything else. Jumba and Pleakley, Nani, freaking Cobra Bubbles. There was a lot, the whole ending with that character that got eliminated. There's so many aspects of this adaptation that were fumbled, and it does just leave a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. But overall, it is a good babysitting film, and there's nothing too offensive about it. And that's kind of what Disney went out to achieve, and they achieved it. So yeah, positives for them, I guess. Anyway, those are my thoughts and feelings on Lilo and Stitch 2025. If you have any questions, concerns, conundrums, let me know down below. Like and subscribe, do all those good things, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.